Welcome to today's deep dive. I'm your host, and I'm joined, as always, by our resident expert to really unpack something that I think, well, pretty much everyone struggles with.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I'm really excited to get into this one.
So picture this, right? You are standing right in the middle of a massive crossroads in your life.
Oh man, we have all been there.
Right. You've got this choice to make, like a really, really big one. Maybe it's a career pivot you've been dreaming about for years, or a cross-country move away from literally everything familiar.
Or maybe a major relationship milestone.
Yeah, exactly that. And you've been agonizing over it for weeks, maybe even months. You've got, those pros and cons lists that have literally spawned their own secondary pros and cons
Yeah,
lists.
the classic analysis paralysis.
Totally. You are just completely paralyzed by information overload. Your stomach is in constant knots. And frankly, you just feel entirely stuck.
It is an incredibly heavy place to be. I mean, the weight of potential regret alone can just freeze you right in your tracks.
It really can.
But what the narrative framework we're exploring today proposes is, well, it's a pretty radical shift in perspective. Like, what if that feeling of being stuck isn't actually a symptom of the problem being too difficult?
Wait, if it's not the problem, then what is it?
What if it's actually a symptom of the way we are processing the problem in the first place?
Okay, wow. That's the core of our deep dive today then. We are looking at the anatomy of making the right decision based on this incredible source material.
Exactly.
We're taking a journey through the chronological process of navigating a crisis, moving step by step from that paralyzing, overwhelming confusion to a state of, like, profound clarity.
Because trying to make a major life decision in our modern world, it feels a lot like trying to listen to a tiny, quiet whisper while you're standing in the middle of a crowded, screaming sports stadium.
That is a perfect analogy. You can't even hear yourself think.
Right. And we often blame ourselves for not being able to hear that whisper. The immediate assumption is that we aren't analytical enough, or that we just haven't gathered enough data to figure out the right path.
But the material says something different.
Yeah, it does. If we follow the logic presented here to understand how to hear the whisper, we first have to understand the specific nature of the noise that's drowning it out.
We have to dissect the anatomy of the confusion itself,
Yeah.
which is fascinating because I think most of us assume confusion is just, the default human setting when you're faced with a high-stakes choice.
Sure, it feels natural, but the argument laid out here is that confusion is never actually our natural state. It is entirely manufactured.
Manufactured by what, exactly?
It's a byproduct of two distinct types of noise. The first is external, and the second is internal. Let's look at the external first.
Okay, let's do it.
When you arrive at that crossroads, the impulse for almost everyone is to start asking people. We seek validation, right?
Oh, yeah. We poll our friends, our family, our mentors. Everyone gets a vote.
Exactly. But in doing so, the material suggests we basically open ourselves up to emotional manipulation.
Oh, interesting. How so?
Well, we suddenly get caught up in what our parents think we should do, or what society dictates is a quote-unquote successful move, or what our peers might judge us for.
And before you know it, the decision you're agonizing over isn't even yours anymore.
Spot on. It becomes this messy patchwork quilt of everybody else's expectations. You aren't deciding what you want. You are negotiating a compromise between 10 different external opinions.
That external pressure, yeah, that creates the first layer of paralysis. I totally see that. So what's the internal noise then?
The internal noise is where the ego steps in. The ego fiercely tries to protect its identity, its status and its comfort zone.
It doesn't like change.
Not at all. And alongside that ego preservation, we experience what this framework calls waste thoughts.
Waste thoughts. I love that term.
It's very descriptive, isn't it? These are the negative loops, the endless what-ifs, the catastrophic scenarios we play on repeat in our heads while we're just trying to fall asleep at night.
It perfectly captures the cognitive drain of anxiety. It actually makes me think of a smartphone.
Oh, how so?
Well, having all these waste thoughts looping, it's like having 50 different really intense apps open in the background of your phone at the exact same time.
Oh, that's a great way to look at it.
Right. You aren't actively using them, but they are draining the battery, they're heating up the device, and they're causing the whole operating system to lag right when you actually need to, open the map and find directions.
That is exactly it. And cognitive load theory backs that up nicely. Your brain only has so much processing power.
Only so much bandwidth.
Right. Those open background apps, your anxieties about past failures, your fears about future judgments, they are literally consuming the bandwidth you need for clear executive function.
So it's this combo of external manipulation and internal waste thoughts that builds like a concrete wall between you and your intuition.
Exactly.
Okay, let me push back on this a bit, though, because framing it all as just noise feels, I don't know, a little dismissive of basic responsibility.
Okay, here.
Like, isn't it just the smart, rational thing to do to gather as many opinions and as much data as possible before making a big move? I mean, you wouldn't buy a house without getting an inspector, an appraiser, checking the neighborhood comps.
No, you're absolutely right. Gathering data is a necessary step. But the distinction we need to make here is between factual data and emotional noise.
Okay, break that down for me.
Getting an inspection on the house is data. It tells you the foundation is cracked. That's a fact. But the noise is your friend projecting their own financial insecurities onto you.
Ah, like them telling you that buying a house right now is terrifying because they couldn't afford it.
Yes. Or the noise is your own ego whispering that you need a bigger house just to look successful to your coworkers.
Okay, I see. So the data informs the intellect, but the noise manipulates the emotion.
Precisely. There is a massive difference between reading a spreadsheet and absorbing someone else's anxiety.
That makes total sense.
The narrative argues that true direction, that whisper you mentioned earlier, it only becomes clear when we consciously separate the data from the noise and then systematically silence that noise.
You literally have to force quit the background apps?
You do.
Well, if the noise of vitamins and emotional waste is the root cause of the paralysis, the obvious next question is, how do we actually turn the volume down? Especially when everything around us feels chaotic.
The turning point in any decision-making process isn't actually the moment you choose option A over option B.
It's not.
No.
Mm-hmm.
The turning point is the deliberate act of silencing the mind. And it's crucial to understand that silencing the mind, at least in this context, is not about staring blankly at a wall or ignoring reality.
Right, it's not about just checking out.
Exactly. It is a highly active process of reprogramming.
And the material gets into some pretty profound concepts here. It talks about reprogramming the mind to activate intuition. And it even mentions developing a form of, well, telepathy.
Yeah, that word definitely jumps out.
It really did. When I first read that, my mind immediately went to science fiction, like reading minds. How does that actually work in a grounded psychological sense?
It does sound esoteric, I'll give you that. But if we break down the mechanism of what the text refers to as telepathy in this context, it's essentially hyper-attunement.
Hyper-attunement, okay.
Think about it. When your brain is screaming with 50 background apps of anxiety, you are completely blind to subtle cues.
Because you're distracted by the noise.
Right. But when you actively silence that internal noise, your subconscious pattern recognition kicks in. You start picking up on micro-expressions, shifts in tone, body language.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. You suddenly have this deep, unspoken understanding of a situation or a person's true motives. It can feel almost magical or telepathic, but it's really just your brain operating at peak observational capacity.
Simply because it doesn't have the interference of anxiety. You are finally able to read the room because you aren't shouting over it in your own head.
Exactly. That's a great way to put it.
But how do we get to that quiet state? The sources emphasize letting go of attachments and creating what they call high-vibration thoughts.
Right. High-vibration thoughts is a term used to describe a cognitive shift out of the fight-or-flight response.
Okay, so moving away from panic.
Yes. When we are stuck, we operate from fear, lack, or ego. And that triggers the amygdala and floods the body with stress hormones.
Which just adds to the confusion.
Generating high-vibration thoughts involves intentionally focusing on peace, gratitude, and acceptance instead.
So what does that actually look like, practically speaking?
It's the act of observing a crisis and consciously deciding not to absorb its panic.
Easier said than done.
Oh, absolutely. But if you practice this intentional framing, it activates the parasympathetic nervous system. It shifts your brain's activity back to the prefrontal cortex, where logic and deep intuition actually live.
And the text suggests this is a daily practice, right?
Yeah.
Taking as little as 2 minutes a day.
Just 2 minutes of focused, mindful intention to clear the mental clutter. That begins manifesting the outcomes you actually want, rather than just reacting to the things you fear.
Okay, I can see the value of a 2-minute mindfulness practice if you're, sitting in a quiet room on a Sunday morning with a cup of tea.
Sure.
But let's apply this to a real listener scenario. You are stuck in bumper-to-bumper traffic. You're already late for a tense family dinner where you know you're going to be interrogated about your life choices.
And your phone is buzzing.
Yes, your phone is buzzing with urgent emails from a boss you are considering quitting on. How on earth Do you access high-vibration thoughts in the middle of a burning crisis like that?
Well, you don't try to learn how to swim while you are already drowning in a hurricane.
Okay, fair point.
That is exactly why the daily practice is the focal point of this entire philosophy. You have to learn to swim in calm waters.
So you do it before the crisis hits.
Exactly. By dedicating just a few minutes every day to practicing this cognitive shift when things are relatively fine, you are building a resilient reservoir of inner peace.
So it's completely proactive, not reactive.
Entirely proactive. That reservoir acts as a psychological shield. When the crisis hits, when the traffic stops and the phone starts buzzing, you aren't frantically searching for the mute button while spiraling into a panic attack.
Because you already know where the button is.
You've already rewired your default neurological response. You observe the chaos, but you don't become it.
That is powerful.
And furthermore, the material argues that this daily practice doesn't just clear your mind, it physically heals the body.
Right, by reducing stress.
Yes, by continuously reducing the chronic cortisol and stress hormones that quite literally cloud our judgment and damage our health over time.
You're building the muscle long before you ever step foot in the gym to lift the heavy weight.
Precisely.
Okay, so let's follow the narrative forward. We've done the work, the noise fades, the screaming stadium is quiet, the background apps are closed. We've reached a state of calm.
The ideal state.
Right. But once the mind is finally silent, who or what is actually making the decision? Because even in a quiet room, a choice still has to be made. It's not a random coin flip.
No, it's not. It requires a highly specific internal alignment.
Internal alignment.
The framework posits that to connect with a higher consciousness or your own deepest truth, you must align three distinct internal faculties: the mind, the intellect, and the soul.
I'm trying to visualize how these three parts interact. Let me try an analogy here. I'm picturing this internal alignment like running a corporation.
Okay, I like where this is going.
How would the mind, the intellect, and the soul fit into an organizational chart?
All right, if we use that corporate structure, the mind is your creative brainstorming department.
The creatives, okay.
Right. It is highly active, entirely driven by emotion, immediate desires, and sensory input. It's pitching a million ideas a minute.
It's throwing things at the wall.
Exactly. Some are brilliant, some are terrible, and all of them are impulsive. It just wants the immediate gratification.
So the mind says, let's quit our job today, move to the beach, and open a smoothie stand.
Right. It's raw desire.
Got it.
Then you have the intellect. The intellect is the rational, analytical CEO of the company.
The one in the suit.
Yeah, the suit. The CEO takes that pitch from the brainstorming department and evaluates it. The intellect discriminates based on logic, past experiences, and factual data.
So it's looking at the spreadsheets?
It looks at the bank account, the feasibility of the business plan, the risks involved. It decides what is practically possible.
And the soul. Where does that fit in?
The soul is the core mission statement of the company. It represents your foundational values, your ultimate why, and your deepest sense of integrity.
Okay, so how do they misalign then?
Well, imagine a scenario where the mind desires a massive promotion because it wants the status and the luxury car.
Classic ego.
Right. The intellect, acting as the CEO, runs the numbers and says, yes, this will double our salary. The logic checks out. We should take the job.
But the job requires 80-hour work weeks and, maybe compromising your ethics.
Exactly. The decision looks flawless on paper to the intellect, and it satisfies the ego of the mind.
Right.
But if the core mission statement of the company, the soul values family, freedom, and ethical contribution above all else, that choice is fundamentally misaligned.
Wow. So the decision is made, but it betrays the foundation.
Yes. And if the CEO ignores the mission statement, the company will eventually collapse from burnout and profound unhappiness.
That makes the concept of alignment incredibly clear.
Yeah.
Making the right decision requires the brainstorming department, the CEO, and the mission statement to all be in total agreement.
The narrative emphasizes that only through this perfect internal consensus can we truly step forward without regret.
So all three have to say yes.
Yes. The mind desires a path. The intellect validates the logic of it, and the soul sits in absolute peace with the ethical reality of it. When these three faculties are aligned, the decision actually ceases to feel like a struggle.
Because you aren't forcing an outcome anymore.
Exactly. The path just naturally presents itself.
It sounds like the absolute holy grail of decision-making. Just total, unshakable, internal consensus.
It is the goal.
But let's bring this back down to the ground for the listener who's standing at that crossroads right now. You've silenced the noise. You feel like your mind, intellect, and soul are finally aligned on a choice. Before you take that irrevocable step, how do you verify it? What is the final check to ensure this path is unequivocally the right one?
The final stage of this chronological journey is applying the ultimate litmus test to our choices.
Okay, what's the test?
The rule established in the material is elegantly simple, yet profoundly difficult for most of us to master. It dictates that you must always choose the path that brings peace and strength, and reject the path that brings confusion.
Choose peace and strength, not confusion.
Yes. The argument here is that if a decision brings you deep inner strength and a profound sense of peace, it is the right path.
And if it doesn't,
If it brings ongoing, lingering confusion, even if it looks perfect on paper, it is the wrong path. Applying this consistently is presented as the key to navigating life, inviting abundance and healing fractured relationships.
you stop trying to forcefully bend the universe to your will using just your intellect.
Right, and you start flowing with what aligns with your deepest self.
I hear you, but I have to grapple with this metric of peace because I feel like that could be dangerously misinterpreted.
So,
Well, think about someone navigating a really messy divorce or someone deciding to shut down a business they poured 10 years of their life into. Breaking up a family or killing a dream doesn't feel peaceful.
no, it doesn't.
It feels like tearing your life down to the studs. You might be crying on the bathroom floor. How can peace possibly be the metric when the reality involves lawyers, lost income, and intense grief?
That is such an important point, and it's a critical distinction to make. We have to separate the concept of peace from the concept of easy or happy.
Okay.
The framework draws a very sharp line between surface-level emotional pain and deep-seated soul-level strength.
So it's not the absence of pain.
Not at all. A tough, necessary choice might be incredibly painful to the ego. It might shatter your comfort zone and be terrifying to your sense of financial or social security. You will likely mourn the loss of the relationship or the career.
Yeah, you have to grieve it.
But underneath that surface-level emotional storm, at the foundation, the right decision provides a quiet, unshakable strength. There is a deep peace in finally knowing you are honoring your truth, even if the logistics of executing it are incredibly messy and painful.
It's almost like the difference between the pain of a surgical incision versus the pain of a festering wound.
Oh, that's brilliant. Say more about that.
Well, the surgery hurts immensely, right? Maybe even more than the illness did for a moment. But underneath the pain, you know it's healing you. The festering wound might just be a dull ache you've gotten used to, but it's slowly making you sick.
That analogy perfectly captures the dynamic. The wrong decision, the festering wound, it perpetuates a fundamental, inescapable confusion.
Because you know deep down it's wrong.
Exactly. If you make the wrong choice, the internal debate never actually stops. You constantly have to convince yourself it was the right move. You find yourself rationalizing it to your friends. Those background apps of anxiety never really close.
With the right decision.
With the right decision, even when it demands incredible bravery, sacrifice, and tears, the spirit settles. The agonizing internal debate finally ends.
You aren't negotiating with yourself anymore.
Precisely. The noise is gone, leaving only that quiet strength to carry you through the difficult logistics.
This has been a really transformative way to look at how we navigate the hardest moments of our lives. Let's trace the full journey we've just taken for the listener who might be staring down a major crossroads today.
Let's do it.
We started at the beginning, completely stuck, paralyzed, and drowning in the noise of external opinions, societal expectations, and the emotional manipulation of the people around us.
We were bogged down by our own ego and a storm of waste thoughts consuming our mental bandwidth.
Then we explored how to actively hit the mute button, not by waiting for the external world to miraculously calm down, but by taking agency.
By utilizing that daily practice of shifting our nervous system, creating high-vibration thoughts to build a proactive reservoir of peace that acts as a shield against chaos.
And from that quiet, protected space, we learned how to align the internal corporate structure. We stopped letting the emotional mind run wild with impulsive desires.
We stopped letting the intellect be cold, calculating, and detached from our values.
Right, and we brought both of them into the service of the soul, the core mission statement.
And finally, we established the ultimate compass for verifying the choice, using deep-seated peace and unshakable strength as the only metrics that truly matter.
Recognizing that the painful surgery of a right decision is fundamentally different from the agonizing confusion of a wrong one.
Mastering this sequence is not presented as a quick party trick for solving one immediate problem. It is fundamentally about reprogramming your psychological baseline.
Shifting your default settings.
Exactly, so that you can step into any crisis, no matter how loud the stadium gets around you, with calm authority.
Because the truth is, the stadium is always going to be loud. The noise will always be there. People will always have opinions about what you should do with your life, your career, and your relationships.
That's just life.
Yeah, it is. The real power is developing the internal alignment to know you don't actually have to listen to them. So as we wrap up this deep dive, I want to leave you with a final thought, something to really chew on the next time you find yourself standing at a crossroads, sweating over a pros and cons list at 2 in the morning.
It's a tough spot to be in.
It really is. Take a step back and ask yourself, are you trying to forcefully solve the problem with your intellect alone, crunching the data until you're exhausted and overwhelmed? Or are you brave enough to sit in the silence, force quit all the background apps of anxiety, and wait for the quiet strength of your soul to cast the deciding vote?